All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the full dose. So if you hopefully you clicked the link and you saw this as a small dose and you're following on to get the full dose. If not, whatever. Welcome. I'm gonna cover it this way. All right. So let me to reiterate what I one of the things that I said in the small dose in this weekly dose of empowerment is that the best way to improve is to embrace failure. The best way to improve is to embrace failure. And again, I know a lot of the times these things are counterintuitive. It's like counterproductive. Like, why would I embrace failure if I want to succeed, if I want to improve? And again, like I was sharing in the small dose, and the small dose was this concept that we typically equate failure to the loss of everything, bankruptcy, right? We go to the extreme, right? Fell in a class, getting in trouble, losing all the money, gambling all the money away, right? We equate failure and at its most extreme end. Fell in a class, fell in a major exam or whatever. And it's not that. It's a little bit more. But let me back up. I want to take head on even this idea that you have to get amazing grades all the time, right? We put a lot of pressure on kids to what we call good grades, and they're really the superior grades. So, right, when I'll informally ask people what are good grades, and I'll ask parents this, and they'll say A's and B's, and I'll say, well, no, no, good is average. So average is C's, and D's dependent, right? But mostly C's, it's middle of the road, right? And our transcripts tell us this, but we begin to equate good grades with high academic excellence. And anything less than that is seen as failure, right? So if I fail a test, if I fail this, if I fail that, and so a lot of people begin to not even try because they fear failure. Now, if you want to improve, and I'm saying embrace failure, I'm not saying go and put everything on black and Vegas and roll the dice or hit the roulette wheel or put your entire life savings on some unknown startup. Those are not smart things to do. When I talk about embracing failure, I'm saying you have to be okay with taking um, and making mistakes, but that's really what failing is. It's missing the mark just a little bit. Okay. So one of the ways that I want to talk about this is, so there was a point in time where I was in law enforcement, and I remember having to qualify on the long arm, actually the M16. And the one thing that they do before, because you don't have an M16 assigned to you, right? So every time you go to qualify, you have to zero in the scope, the aperture, the sights, right? Because they have fixed sights, but that you can adjust them and move based off of. So it's not really complicated, but essentially it's a little difficult to explain if you don't understand what an M16 is, but they have a front and rear sight, and they adjust the sight based off of how you are firing. So that you go through a few courses of fire to zero in the sight so that you are accurately looking down a sight, and then you should be able to shoot and hit the mark within reason. Okay. And so in that, you know, you're basically taking shots and you're shooting at this paper target. And in the course of that, you are all over the place the first time. And then they make some adjustments. And then you go a second time. And then they say, okay, well, I noticed that you are still pulling, up to the right, upper right, or the lower right. And so based off of that, they make some more adjustments. Okay. So you have the first shot where you just dry, the second shot where they make some modifications. And then after the third one, you should be pretty straightforward in terms of zeroing in. Okay. And then from there, you go and you actually go through the course of fire. Now, all of that is what failing is. It's taking taking shots, all right, pardon the pun, taking shots and then zeroing in. All right. So let me pull this into an academic space because, most of us have taken some sort of exam or test in our life, right? Um, and so what typically happens in that case is we think and we equate being able to remember or pass the test with an A, right? Flying colors, right? Pass with flying colors. And we say, that means that I know what I'm doing. And then we shun anything or we get down on ourselves if we don't get all of the questions or most of the questions right. Okay. But when you fail, like let's say you fail to get the score that you want, what it does is you typically go back and you study the stuff, right? You look at the things that you got wrong, but you also have the ability to look at the things that you got right. What am I really understanding about this? Okay. And it's so you get this opportunity, just like zeroing in to be able to accurately shoot. You are zeroing in and saying, okay, when I made it, when I made the attempt here, it didn't quite work out, but you deconstruct it and you say this was the point of departure, right? So up to this point, that's when it went off the rail, and then from there you make an adjustment and then you reattempt, right? And you say, okay, now and then now. So your first time out the shoot, just like right now with me doing these videos, I'm not. I didn't just start and if you listen to some older videos, it wasn't really the way that I quote unquote wanted to be. I was failing at it. I didn't like the way that I sounded, or I was saying and I had this idea in my mind of what it meant to be a really good um content producer. And and then I said, I just really have to show up in these videos how I show up in session and be less concerned with being perfect and more concerned with being effective, right? Am I getting these things out? And it allows me to just say what I say, talk the way that I talk, and just be me and show up and have these thoughts. And maybe as I'm saying something, another thought pop in my head that might make a little more sense. And then I go that way and I shift. As long as it sticks and lands, that is for me what matters the most. Okay. So again, if we remove if we remove failure from the extreme, right? And the loss of everything, or you having to repeat a grade or whatever. And even if you repeat a grade, what happens? You go in and now you say, "Oh, okay, I know this is not a game. I need to take it serious." Right? So I can remember actually in the seventh grade, I got held back. I was in my hometown, and I didn't take school seriously. I was joking around, I was being a clown, I was being disrespectful. And it was towards one teacher in particular. I can't even remember his name. Um but um he all the other classes I did well in, but just some, I don't know, our personalities didn't click. I thought I was grown, whatever. It was a whole host of things working in the background at that time. But what I did was I said to myself, okay, after I failed, and then my mom let them hold me back. I said, wow, okay, I need to take this a little more serious. And then I did what I needed to do. And then I got to the eighth grade. And then, but because now I'm a year behind and I didn't want that. Right. So then I started taking things a little bit more seriously in terms of how am I approaching school? What am I doing? And all of that. And so, but yeah, it was that failure. It was that piece, me being held back and having to repeat that grade that said, okay, wait a second, um now I'm not with the people that I was with, that I started with, the friends that I was making. Now we in different grades. This not a good look, right? So I worked a little bit harder to actually get where I needed to be at that time. And so when this point, the failing, the being held, the being kept, and make causing me to repeat the grade, As a result, I began to take it more serious. And if I'm willing to bet if you can think back to a point at which you took something for granted and then failed at it or lost it, that you begin to say or to take things a little more seriously, right? um and then some, even sometimes taking things a little more or a little less seriously. Okay, you reprioritize. And so for me, it was that I needed to get myself together so that I could be successful and, get out of that middle school and then go to high school and get out of school, period. All right, so hopefully this helps you understand a little bit more of what I'm talking about when I say embracing failure is important if you want to improve, right? Because when you learn, when you don't do something perfect out the gate, you take the time and you say you have to evaluate where it is that you went wrong. Well, you should evaluate where you went wrong, and that gives you the areas to improve. And it might not be the entire thing that you need to improve or change or whatever. You just need to do one thing, two things different, and it makes a world of difference. And then you have the success, or you improve in that way. All right, so again, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. Thank you for hanging out with me this time, this full dose of empowerment, and I'll see you next time. Take care.